The rain hammered down, turning the neon sign of Ellie's Café, Brew and Haven, into a smeared red glow. Inside, Ellie scrubbed the counter, her hands moving on instinct. The clock read 7:58 p.m., 2 minutes to closing. Her apron was coffee-stained, her sneakers soaked from a dash to the bank earlier, and in her pocket sat a single crumpled dollar, her last until the cafe had a good day. She glanced at her daughter's drawing taped to the register, a stick-figure mom and girl under a rainbow. "We'll make it, Mia," she whispered, as if her 6-year-old could hear her from her grandma's house across town. The bell above the door jingled. Ellie tensed. "Who comes in now?" A man shuffled inside, his coat ragged, beard scruffy, clutching a worn backpack. But his eyes, piercing blue, like they saw straight through her. "Got a dollar?" he asked, his voice low, almost ashamed. That dollar was her bus fare home. Without it, she'd walk in the rain. But those eyes, they held something raw, something that tugged at her. She pulled the bill from her pocket and pressed it into his hand. "Take it," she said softly. His fingers brushed hers, warm despite the cold, and he looked at her like she'd handed him the world. "You're kind," he murmured, then slipped back into the storm. Ellie locked up, shaking her head. "Stupid move, Ellie." The rain soaked her as she trudged home, but those blue eyes lingered, like a melody she couldn't shake. A week later, Ellie was juggling the morning rush at Haven. The cafe was her heart, her slice of the American dream, but it was sinking. The landlord's voicemail that morning had been blunt. Rent was due in 10 days, and she was $2,000 short. Mia's school fees loomed, and the fridge at home held half a loaf of bread and some ketchup. She forced a smile, handing a latte to a regular, her mind racing. Sell the jukebox? Beg for an extension? The bell jingled, and her breath caught. A man stepped in, tall, clean-shaven, in a tailored navy suit, a gleaming watch on his wrist. His walk was confident, his presence commanding. But those eyes, those same blue eyes. It was him, her dollar man. He approached the counter, a faint smile on his lips. "Medium black, please," he said, his voice smoother now, but unmistakable. Ellie fumbled with the coffee pot, her thoughts a mess. Is he a con artist? A twin? She poured the coffee, eyeing his Rolex, worth more than her car. "You're different," she said, sliding the cup over. He leaned in slightly. "You saved me last week, Ellie. That dollar? It was more than money." He tapped the counter, left a 20, and walked out, leaving her staring at the empty doorway. He knows my name. Her apron tag read Eleanor, but still, how? And what did he mean, saved? The cafe buzzed around her, but all she could think was that her world had just tilted. Ellie hadn't always been scraping by. 5 years ago, she was a paralegal in Chicago, engaged to Greg, a charming lawyer with big promises. They planned a life, house, kids, stability. Then Greg vanished, taking her savings and her trust, leaving her with newborn Mia. Ellie moved back to Willow Creek, Indiana, poured everything into Haven, and swore off men. Mia was her world now, and the cafe was her fight. But the bills kept coming, and every day felt like a losing battle. That night, after closing, Ellie sat at a corner table, tallying receipts. The numbers were brutal. She was drowning. She rubbed her temples, fighting a headache when the bell jingled. Not him, but Mrs. Carter, a regular with a bag of homemade cookies. "For Mia," she said warmly. "You're doing great, hon." Ellie forced a smile. "Thanks, Mrs. C." The kindness hurt more than it should. She locked up, her mind drifting to the man. Who is he? That 20 he'd left burned in her pocket as she walked home. The next morning, he was back. Same suit, same watch, same eyes. He ordered his coffee and slid into a booth. Ellie watched him, curiosity wrestling with caution. Finally, she grabbed a rag and approached, wiping tables nearby. "You gonna tell me what's going on?" she asked, keeping her tone light but sharp. He looked up, his smile almost shy. "Name's Tom, and I owe you an explanation." "Damn right you do," she said, then caught herself. "Sorry, it's just you were different last week." Tom nodded, stirring his coffee. "I was in a rough spot. That dollar you gave me? It got me a bus ticket to a shelter in Indy. They helped me clean up, get back on my feet. I'm not what I seemed, Ellie." She crossed her arms. So what are you? Some millionaire playing dress-up? His laugh was soft, but his eyes stayed serious. Something like that. I'm figuring things out. But I meant it. You saved me. Her cheeks warmed. She wanted to push, but a customer waved for a refill. Don't vanish again, she said, pointing at him before heading back to the counter. Tom became a regular, showing up mid-morning, ordering his coffee, lingering in his booth. Ellie caught herself glancing at him more than she'd admit. He left big tips, $10, $20, and once a $50 with a note for Mia's school fund. She stared at that note, her throat tight. How does he know about Mia? She didn't ask. Not yet, but their talks grew longer. He'd ask about the café, Willow Creek, her life. She dodged the personal stuff, but his quiet humor, the way he listened, chipped away at her walls. One morning, he noticed Mia's drawing by the register. Your kid? He asked, nodding at it. Yeah, Mia. She's 6, Ellie said, softening. Draws better than me already. Tom smiled. She's lucky to have you. Ellie snorted. Lucky to have a mom who can't pay the rent? Sure. His face grew serious. You're fighting for her. That's more than luck. She looked away, busying herself with the espresso machine. His words hit too deep. The cafe's troubles didn't ease. The landlord called again, his tone sharper. 5 days to pay rent or face eviction. Ellie scoured job listings at night, but nothing paid enough to save the cafe and cover Mia's needs. She was too proud to ask her mom for help, who was already watching Mia most evenings. One afternoon, Tom walked in with a paper bag. For you, he said, setting it on the counter. Inside was a blue wool scarf, soft and clearly expensive. Winter's coming, he said simply. Ellie traced the fabric, stunned. Tom, I can't. You can, he cut in. You gave me something when I had nothing. Let me return the favor. She wanted to argue, but the scarf felt like care, plain and simple. She mumbled a thanks, her eyes stinging, and tucked it behind the counter. That night, as she locked up, she saw Tom across the street, talking to a man in a suit. They shook hands, and Tom glanced her way, his expression unreadable. Her stomach twisted. What's he hiding? The next morning, Ellie arrived to find the cafe's front window cracked, a jagged line spiderwebbing across it. Her heart sank. Another bill I can't pay. The glazier quoted $500. She hung up, fighting tears. When Tom walked in an hour later, he saw her red eyes instantly. Everything okay? He asked, his voice gentle. She shook her head. Just life. Windows busted, rent's due, and I'm out of moves. Tom hesitated, then pulled out his wallet. Let me help. No, she snapped, sharper than she meant. I don't need charity. It's not charity, he said, firm but kind. It's paying forward what you did for me. She wanted to believe him, but those eyes held secrets. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from her mom. Mia's sick. Taking her to the doc. Need you here. Ellie's heart raced. I gotta go, she said, grabbing her coat. She looked at Tom, her voice softening. Stay. We'll talk later. He nodded, but as she rushed out, she caught his reflection in the cracked window, watching her go. Who are you, Tom? She thought, her world tilting again. Ellie's sneakers pounded the wet pavement as she rushed to her mom's house. The cracked cafe window and Tom's vague offer swirling in her mind. Mia's sickness, nothing serious, just a cold. Her mom had texted, lit a fire under her. Willow Creek's streets blurred past, the autumn chill biting through her jacket. Please, let her be okay. At her mom's bungalow, Ellie found Mia curled on the couch, pale but smiling. Mommy, she croaked, reaching out. Ellie knelt, brushing her daughter's hair back, her heart easing at those big brown eyes. Just a cold, her mom, Linda, said, handing Ellie tea. Doc gave her meds. She'll be fine soon. Ellie exhaled, relief flooding her. Thanks, Mom. She stayed until Mia dozed off, then kissed her forehead and promised to return. Outside, her phone buzzed, a voicemail from the landlord. 3 days, Ellie. No excuses. Her stomach nodded. The cafe, Mia, the window. It was all too much, and Tom's face kept creeping into her thoughts. Why does he care? Back at Haven the next morning, Ellie taped plastic over the cracked window, her hands shaky from exhaustion. The cafe was quieter than usual, the regulars' chatter drowned out by her worries. She hadn't seen Tom since yesterday's rushed exit, and part of her wondered if he'd vanished again, like that rainy night. She touched the blue scarf he'd given her, now by the register, and felt a pang she couldn't name. The bell jingled, and there he was, Tom, in another sharp suit, his blue eyes finding her instantly. He carried a small toolbox, of all things, and set it on the counter with a shy grin. "Heard about the window," he said. "I know a guy who can fix it. Cheap. You okay with me calling him?" Ellie blinked, caught off guard. "You don't have to." "I want to," he said, his voice steady. "You've got enough going on." Her pride battled her desperation. "Finally," she nodded. "Okay, but I'm paying you back." Tom's smile was soft, almost sad. "Deal." The window guy, Sal, came that afternoon, replacing the glass in an hour for $100, half what Ellie was quoted. She tried to thank Tom, but he waved it off, sipping coffee in his usual booth. "Just helping a friend," he said. Friend. The word warmed her despite herself. She didn't have many of those since Greg's betrayal left her guarded. But Tom was different, quietly there, never pushing, always giving her space. Still, the suits, the watch, his vague answers nagged at her. Who is he really? Tom became a fixture over the next few days, showing up for his coffee, fixing a wobbly table, bringing pastries from Indy for Mia, slipping $50 into the tip jar when he thought she wasn't looking. Ellie's guard slipped. She caught herself smiling more. One morning, as she refilled his cup, she teased, "We're gonna go broke tipping like this." He chuckled, eyes crinkling. "I'm good for it. Trust me." "Trust you?" She raised an eyebrow, leaning on the counter. "I don't even know you, Tom." "Not really." His smile faded, and for a moment, he was the man from that rainy night, raw lost. "Fair," he said quietly, "but I'm trying to change that." Before she could push, a customer waved for a refill. "Don't disappear," she said, pointing at him. That night, Ellie sat Mia down for dinner in their tiny apartment, the scarf around her shoulders. Mia, feeling better, chattered about school, her cough fading. "Mommy, who's the nice man at the cafe?" she asked, dipping her spoon into soup. Ellie paused, fork halfway to her mouth. "Just a friend," she said, echoing Tom. But it felt heavier, like a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. The next day, Tom arrived with a plan. "There's a food festival in Indy next weekend," he said, sliding a flyer across the counter. "Your coffee could kill it. I've got a contact who can get you a booth, no cost." Ellie stared at the flyer. A festival could bring cash, maybe enough for rent. But it meant trusting Tom, stepping into his world, whatever that was. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. He leaned closer, eyes locking with hers. "Because you saw me when I was invisible. I owe you, Ellie, more than you know." Her breath caught. That pull between them, unspoken but real, sparked again. She nodded slowly. "Okay, let's do it." The festival was chaos, but the good kind. Ellie set up a booth with Brew & Haven's logo, pouring her maple latte, while Tom worked the crowd, his charm drawing people in. They sold out by noon, pocketing $1,500, almost enough for rent. Ellie laughed more that day than she had in months, her shoulder brushing Tom's as they packed up. For a moment, she let herself imagine this. Working together, stealing glances, could be real. But driving back to Willow Creek in Tom's borrowed SUV, the air shifted. He was quieter, hands tight on the wheel. Ellie couldn't hold back. "Tom, level with me," she said, turning to him. "Who are you? Really?" He pulled over, engine idling. Silence stretched, heavy. Finally, he spoke, voice low. "I used to be somebody. Built a tech company in Chicago. Made millions. Lost it all. Bad deals, worse friends, and choices I regret. I hit rock bottom, Ellie. That night you gave me that $1. I was sleeping in alleys, trying to claw my way back." Ellie's heart pounded. "So the suits, the money?" "I'm rebuilding," he said, meeting her eyes. "Got a deal in Indy, a chance to start over. I'm not that guy anymore. The one with the big house, big ego. I'm just Tom. And you reminded me what kindness feels like." She stared, mind reeling. A millionaire. A broken man. Her dollar man. Questions swirled, but before she could ask, he reached for her hand, his touch warm, hesitant. "I don't expect you to trust me yet," he said. "But I'm here. For you. For Mia." Her throat tightened. She wanted to pull away, to protect herself, but his hand felt like an anchor. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Then don't," he said softly. "Just let me stay." They drove back in silence, the moment lingering. At the cafe, Ellie locked up, her mind tangled. Tom's past, his kindness, it was too much, too fast. As she turned to say goodnight, he was gone, taillights fading down the street. The next morning, a letter slid under the cafe door. No signature, just a $5,000 check and a note. For Brew and Haven. "Keep fighting." Ellie's hands shook. Tom. It had to be, but his number was disconnected. Her heart sank. He's gone. Again. The check sat on the counter of Brew and Haven, a $5,000 weight Ellie couldn't ignore. It was enough to cover rent, fix the fridge, maybe buy Mia new shoes. But it came with Tom's absence, his number disconnected, his booth empty, that note. "Keep fighting." Ellie stared at the check, her heart caught between gratitude and frustration. He'd bared his soul in that car, told her he was a fallen tech millionaire clawing his way back, then vanished again. Why run? She wanted to be mad, to write him off like she had Greg years ago. But those blue eyes, that scarf, the way he'd said, "I'm here for you," and Mia, they clung to her like morning fog. She deposited the check, hands trembling as she handed it to the teller. It cleared instantly, no strings. The landlord backed off, and the cafe breathed easier. But Ellie didn't. Tom's story, riches, ruin, redemption, played on a loop. She'd let herself hope, let herself feel, and now he was gone. Again, Willow Creek slipped into its quiet autumn rhythm. Ellie poured herself into the cafe, baking extra muffins, tweaking the menu, anything to keep her hands busy and her heart still. Mia was back at school, her cold gone, her drawings brighter. One afternoon, as Ellie wiped down tables, Mia tugged her sleeve. "Mommy, is the nice man coming back?" Ellie's chest tightened. "I don't know, sweetie," she said, ruffling Mia's hair. "But we're okay. Just you and me." Mia nodded, but her eyes lingered on the blue scarf by the register. Ellie hadn't worn it since Tom left. It felt too much like clinging to a ghost. 2 weeks passed. No Tom. The bell jingled only for regulars. Mrs. Carter with her cookies, Sal with his quick latte orders. Life moved on, but it felt duller, like the world had lost a spark. Ellie hated admitting it. Even to herself, she missed him. His quiet humor, his steady presence, the way he saw her when she felt invisible. One morning, as she swept the cafe floor, a stranger walked in. Older, gray suit, leather briefcase. "Eleanor Hayes?" he asked, glancing at a notepad. "That's me," she said, gripping the broom wary. "I'm Richard Klein, attorney. I represent Thomas Brennan." He slid a card across the counter. Brennan, Tom's last name. Her pulse quickened. "Is he okay?" she asked, voice tight. Richard smiled faintly. "He's fine. He asked me to deliver this." He handed her an envelope, thick with papers. "It's a proposal. For your business." Ellie's hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a contract, a partnership offer. Tom wanted to invest in Brew and Haven, not as charity, but as a co-owner. The terms were fair, generous, even offering capital to expand, hire help, and keep the cafe afloat. A note in Tom's handwriting was tucked inside. "You gave me a second chance. Let me help you build yours." She looked up at Richard, stunned. "Where is he?" "He's in Indy, closing a deal," Richard said. "He'll be back in a few days. Wanted you to have this first." Ellie nodded, her throat tight. A partnership, a lifeline for the cafe. But it wasn't just about the money. It was Tom, reaching out again, even after running. She spent the day rereading the contract, her mind a mess. Could she trust him? Could she let him in, not just into her business, but her life? That night, Ellie sat with her mom, the contract spread on the kitchen table. Linda sipped tea, eyeing the papers. "This Tom, he's got a big heart," she said. "But you're scared." Ellie sighed, rubbing her temples. "He's been burned, Mom. So have I. What if this is just another promise that falls apart?" Linda reached for her hand. You've been carrying the world, Ellie. Maybe it's time to let someone help. Ellie stared at the scarf, now draped over a chair. Her mom was right. She was tired. Tired of fighting alone. Tired of guarding her heart. But Tom wasn't Greg. He'd seen her at her lowest, given her his truth. Maybe it was time to take a chance. The next morning, she signed a contract and mailed it to Richard's office. It felt like jumping off a cliff, but also like breathing for the first time in years. She threw herself into the cafe, planning upgrades, a new espresso machine, maybe a kid's corner for Mia. The regulars noticed her lighter step, her real smiles. Mrs. Carter winked. Got a spring in your step, hon. Ellie laughed. Maybe. 3 days later, the bell jingled, and her heart stopped. Tom stood in the doorway, suit crisp, eyes nervous but warm. The cafe was empty, the morning rush over. He stepped inside, hands in his pockets. You got the contract? She nodded, leaning on the counter, trying to keep her cool. Signed it. You're officially stuck with me. His laugh was soft, relieved. Good. I was hoping. Silence hung between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Ellie took a breath. Why'd you leave, Tom? After the festival, the check, you just disappeared. He looked down, then back at her, his eyes raw. I got scared. I messed up a lot, Ellie. Lost people I cared about. I didn't want to drag you into my mess if I couldn't follow through. But I'm here now. For real. Her heart thudded. She wanted to stay guarded, but his honesty, his quiet strength, broke through. You can't keep running, she said softly. Not if we're doing this. Cafe, partnership, whatever this is. He stepped closer, his voice low. I'm done running. I want this. The cafe. You. Mia. If you'll let me. Her breath caught. It wasn't a grand declaration, but it was real, grounded in the kind of hope that comes from hard fights. She reached for the scarf, holding it out. You gave me this. Now you owe me a coffee date. No suits, just you. He grinned, the tension breaking. Deal. The weeks that followed were a slow dance of rebuilding. Tom moved to Willow Creek, working with Ellie to revamp Brew and Haven. They added outdoor seating, a new menu, and a corner for Mia to draw during shifts. The cafe thrived, pulling in new customers, the till fuller than it had been in years. Tom was there every morning, sleeves rolled up, joking with Mia, stealing glances at Ellie. They weren't rushing, too many scars for that, but every shared laugh, every brush of hands, built something steady. There were challenges. Ellie's trust wobbled sometimes, old wounds from Greg flaring up. Tom had his own struggles, meetings with investors in Indy, moments of doubt about his past. But they talked through it, over late-night coffee or walks with Mia, who'd taken to calling Tom the nice man with a grin. One evening, as they locked up the cafe, Mia asleep in Tom's arms, Ellie looked at him. You're not invisible anymore, she said softly. He smiled, his eyes bright. Neither are you. It wasn't a fairy tale. There'd be bills, bad days, moments of fear. But standing there, with Mia's soft snores and Tom's steady presence, Ellie felt something she hadn't in years. Hope. Not just for the cafe, but for a future together. If this story touched you, comment where you're from and subscribe to the channel.